Right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to start sharing screens. So hopefully this goes. Um, it's, just a formal hello. My name is Sarah Forbes. I am a senior lecturer at the University of York, but I'm probably best known as co-director of the Equal Parenting Project. And today I'm going to be talking you through what it is that we did to plan our project and actually how we have been able to gather evidence of the impact that we've achieved. I won't go into the specifics of the actual impact, but you'll kind of see it being referred to. But if you'd like more detail, obviously, I'm very happy to talk about things, at the end. So, yeah. Okay. So, as I've said, this is horrible photos. But this is me, alongside my colleague Holly Burkett. She's at the University of Birmingham. That's where we started our project back in 2017. We both have, been working on this over this time, accumulating contacts and, further opportunities for impact over this period. We have been able to draw upon our backgrounds. So my own background is in marketing, so it's in social marketing, which is very much around trying to create interventions to actually create change. So it nicely fits into impactful work. Holly has a background in organizational studies, but obviously we draw upon other areas such as, human resource management, social policy, things like that. So, when we did actually develop the Equal Parenting Project, we were very mindful that, we wanted to actually achieve change. And that's exactly what you will be doing yourself with your own work. You're wanting to actually achieve positive change in society. So we are taking the approach that, yes, research is really important for us, but we actually want to have those engagements to achieve that positive change. So you can see in the photos, that's us at the Working Dad Employer Awards. That's myself at the Women at Equality Select Committee, and that's us also with the Ambassador of Iceland. So one thing I'll say is that we always seized opportunities, and we were also very mindful that, contacts build contacts. So, even with I think I've mentioned this in the previous session with, Harriet Watt, when it came to the Icelandic ambassador, he, literally, we just emailed him and said, hey, look, would you like to come along to this event that we're hosting in Parliament? And this was at the very beginning of our project. And he said, yes. So that was exceptional for us because it actually built further contacts with government as a result of having the ambassador. But we were able to visit the ambassador and talk to him about what policies were implemented in Iceland and the difficulties that were experienced as a result of certain elements of the policies, et cetera, et cetera. So really great. But yeah, anyways, so in terms of the Equal Parenting Project, I'm just going to read this off so that way I can actually make sure that I'm staying to time. But, with the Equal Parenting Project, the overall aim of the project of work is to break down gendered cultural norms around care and flexible working and promote more equal distribution of care in families in order to promote gender equality in the workplace and beyond. Our research findings show that in order to do this, we need to reduce barriers to fathers getting involved in childcare. So you can see there that we also have a number of outcomes that we're wanting to achieve. And this is actually just a nice way for us to kind of encompass all of the various streams that we have of our work. So it covers things like parental leave policies, like flexible working, actually just saying, we want to improve support for working dads in the workplace. We're wanting to achieve change both within organizations, but also within government as well. And we're also in the last piece, you can see creating and enhancing positive narrative around fathers doing care. And so that's actually something that we've been able to, we're trying to achieve through engagement with the press. So this is just covering the 4 streams of our work. So we have, you've seen those outcomes that we'd like to achieve. We're doing it through these various streams. So we have our parental leave research and lobbying, our stream in terms of flexible working and the future of work. We also developed a toolkit, so that's the Fathers in the Workplace toolkit. And then we also have the Working Dads Employer Awards. So those are hosted in Parliament every 2 years, and that's a great way for us to try and incentivize and encourage change by organizations. So you can see that there's the various outcomes we'd like to achieve, the different streams in which our work has been, the Equal Parenting Project, what it is. But overarching, all of these are actually aiming to achieve policy change, organizational policy change, and culture change. So, what we can see here is just what I've summarized as what we're wanting to achieve in terms of our outcomes for impact. So you can see the policy change, you've got government surveys, government inquiries, government consultations, etc. Then you've got organization policy change, and then culture change. So you can see the different streams of impact in there as well. So you can see the Working Dad Employer Awards, that's one stream of impact, and that's under organization policy change. And then you can also see, in terms of flexible working and the future of work, that's also coming into the organization policy change, but in addition to that, that's under policy change as well. So all of that work can feed into various methods of actually trying to achieve impact. But yeah, so that's just to give you an idea as to how those streams of impact might feed into various pathways. But one thing I'll just emphasize is that you'll see that at the beginning, it's talking about research output goes into this. One thing is you may not necessarily you might have preliminary findings. You might have, work that's ongoing, not necessarily a publication as of yet or something like that, but you can still actually feed that in. So even though it says research output, I would just say, take that with a pinch of salt, just get in there and actually, when it does come to government, when it does come to organizations, they really, really love, getting their hands on new information, new data, and things like that. So, even if it is in a preliminary stage, actually you are not prevented from engaging with them, with that information. So I know that everyone's probably heard this already, but when it does come to impact, it is very important just to recognize that impact is different from engagement. Engagement is very important. Engagement is really, really important. You have to have, typically you have engagement to achieve impact. But the thing is, we must be accepting that that's not impact in and of itself. So sending an email to somebody with your research attached, that's not impact. Having a citation, even though I'm going to be mentioning it later in the presentation, just having a citation in a report, that's not enough. You have to actually follow up and identify what's happened as a result of that engagement. So really, engagement, wonderful, really important, but just to emphasize that that's not impact, okay? And then obviously, just because, everyone does different types of impact, I'm trying to just, recognize that various types of impact exist. Within our own work, we do, organization policy, organization culture, legislative change, things like that. So, and even in terms of public discourse, yes, but other forms of impact exist. But that's what I'm going to be emphasizing today. So there's going to be an emphasis on policy, on culture change, and things like that. So when it comes to actually planning impact, it's really important to start thinking about what it is that you exactly want to achieve. So, thinking about the specific benefit of, if that will be achieved amongst a specific group. How will this be achieved? What steps are needed to achieve that? And then who are the contacts needed? What evidence do you need? And when do you expect these events, engagements to happen? So just making sure I've read that. And then, And then one thing just to be mindful of as well is that, yes, planning is really important. In fact, planning is essential, but sometimes there are things that can come up, can arise that weren't planned for. But this is where it's just really important to identify opportunities as well. So planning, essential, and that's obviously what I'm going to be going into a lot today, but then there will be things that can actually come up and be quite fortuitous. So yeah. Um, what do you want to achieve with your work? So in terms of the Equal Parenting Project, what did we want to achieve? We wanted to see an increase in the use of parental leave amongst fathers. We wanted to see an increase of flexible working being used by fathers. We wanted to obviously identify that there would be an improvement in earnings by mothers, increased labour market attachment by mothers. When it comes to the hours of unpaid work that are being distributed, increased levels being taken on board by the father. And that would be in things not just around entertainment, but also education and general childcare as well. So that's something that we want to actually think about. And when you do look at this, it's really important to just emphasize that this will give you ideas, start forcing you to think about how am I going to actually try and measure that? What will I actually use to demonstrate that having occurred? So it kind of starts you off on that process. Then how will this be achieved? You've got to be mindful that you have your rigorous research. You do have, in terms of when it comes to us with the Equal Parenting Project, we had engagement with government departments, MPs, committees. Now, some of you might be at the very beginning of your journey when it does come to, if you are thinking about policy, you might not necessarily think, oh, how do I engage with them? How do I, contact them? How do I start? This is where it's really great to engage with the university and actually be aware that they may have contacts, they may actually have the means to connect you with particular MPs perhaps. So for ourselves, we were able to be connected via an NGO. So this is when I was at the University of Birmingham when we were starting out, we actually were connected to the Government Equalities Office, as it was named at the time, through our connection with business in the community, which is what the university had contacts with. So, when we actually developed that relationship with them, we were able to then say, can we be connected to, government or government department or the like. So we seized that opportunity. We always emphasize whatever we were doing, networks build networks. It's really important to take that time to actually try and actually get further contacts. So, in terms of achieving those desired outcomes, as mentioned on the previous slide, in relation to parental leave, flexible working, improved duration of use of policy, we obviously need to have things like, legislative change. So if we're talking about improving the duration of parental leave used, we have paternity leave. So we have to try and recognise that, if we want to have longer use, we need to have legislative change. And also in terms of even recognising when it comes to parental leave, there is shared parental leave. So shared parental leave, does have significant issues in relation to the amount of pay that is actually offered when it comes to shared parental leave. So there are different ways, different policies that we would actually be trying to encourage change in. So we're not just limited to paternity leave. We're very mindful of the various forms of leave that will be supporting parents within the first year after birth or adoption. And then when it comes to actually achieving organizational policy change, obviously we need to be thinking about engaging with organizations. We need to be making sure that we actually have those relationships with organizations. Again, for ourselves, when it came to the Equal Parenting Project, we were connecting with our first contact was again through the university. And we then used those contacts to actually start our data collection. And from there, we were able to then, engage with government. And then as a result of that, we were able to kind of build and use that to our advantage in relation to connecting with other companies. So, you know, when it does come to, again, thinking about how you have those relationships, build further relationships, networks, build networks, that was really important for us. So we're able to engage with organizations to achieve organization policy change. And then we have engagement and collaboration with NGOs. That's critical if we want to achieve change. So they can lobby and use our work, and they have, to actually try and get organizations to change their policies, but also importantly, government. So you know, being involved with NGOs in the area in terms of for the Equal Parenting Project, we have contacts with CIPD, CBI, Working Families, Fatherhood Institute, Future Men, and you know, it's really important to actually maintain those relationships, having them use our work, having them incorporate and lobby the government using our work. That's really, really essential for us. And then also in terms of having, you know, organization change, even culture change within organizations. We did, in the early stages of the Equal Parenting Project, develop and use, or encourage organizations to use the Fathers in the Workplace Toolkit. So that was really important for us. If we were wanting to get organizations that may not have the resources, that may not know exactly how to begin the process to actually be more supportive of fathers taking on more childcare, we wanted to have that toolkit in place so that they actually had something. They had a like how-to guide in a way. So that was really important. Improve communication. So that was really important in terms of how policy was communicated. So one of the early findings we had, especially around shared parental leave, was the communication of policy was just simply atrocious. And it was deemed quite confusing. So in terms of improvement in communication, that was essential to actually make sure that people were able to interpret and understand policy, but also making sure that there was an improved level of awareness of policy that was available to them. You know, when it came to shared parental leave, to this day even, we still have fathers, families, mothers say they thought that shared parental leave was unpaid parental leave, which is a different policy entirely. And so that's really, you know, quite important in relation to improving, or, you know, for us to achieve that desired outcome of, you know, improved use of parental leave, duration of parental leave, and even those other outcomes or desired outcomes in terms of increased earnings by mothers, et cetera, et cetera. And then, you know, I've already touched upon the development of practical toolkits, but that, you know, change in workplace culture is really important for our work, because obviously if we're going to, you know, see increased use of policy, you have to have the culture to support that. And that's not just saying, you know, culture generally, but, you know, line managers, HR, processes, what practices do they have that actually support or encourage fathers to actually use longer leave, or to just, you know, using flexible working and the like. So when it came to, let's see, making sure. Okay, what steps are needed to reach this group or outcome? So when it came to our work, we have consultations, we've got inquiries, we've got government surveys, research, engagement with civil servants, engagement with lobby groups, communication, organization case studies, incentivized work, right? So like in trying to incentivize organizations to actually change what they do, but also to kind of scream out what they're doing. Because when organizations, one thing we've noticed is that when organizations actually see others doing something, they want to be a part of it. So that's always really, really interesting. But to go through each of these consultations, so, you know, many of you will actually be doing this yourselves, contributing to consultations. And that's really important, because that's the government essentially trying to understand what it is that they're doing, or, you know, informing their future steps by engaging with the general public and researchers, getting their input as to what they should do. That's actually been something that we have really, well, in a way, we've benefited from that. So, as one story, to emphasize something that is important when it comes to working in policy, being very mindful of what's going on at the present time, essential, really important. Like um, keep tabs on what's going on. So for us, when it came to it was Theresa May's as Prime Minister, she actually made an announcement, I think it was 2017, when she said that there was going to be a consultation on flexible working and parental leave, sorry. So what happened then was, everyone was expecting that there was to be a consultation. Now, obviously, Theresa May stepped away and then Boris Johnson stepped in and things like that. But over the course of that time, we actually were engaging with MPs and we were asking, what's going on with this consultation? What's happening? And it had been 2 years. And so what happened was they said, don't know, not sure what's going on, haven't heard anything. Or I'm not sure I don't know anything about that. So we were actually very, aware that when you make these announcements, they have to follow through. So it is that they should have had a consultation. So we used our contacts, and I'll probably refer to this actually later, but we used our contacts amongst MPs and amongst peers to actually find out what was going on, found out nothing was going on. Then we had one of our contacts in the Lords, House of Lords, actually, it was nicely done, but it was actually, to ask the business secretary, in the House of Lords what was going on with the consultation. So, using this to actually say, where is it? When is it happening? So we had Baroness Burt, she's a Lib Dem peer, Lord Fox, Lib Dem peer, and Lord McNichol, he's a Labour peer. They actually did this nice, back and forth, jumping on the fact that there hasn't been this consultation. And they asked this in the House of Lords. And then, I think it was within a week, suddenly the government said, we're having this consultation. So, that was really important because, obviously, if it wasn't raised, it would not have actually been rolled out. So that then became the Good Work Plan consultation, which was really great. Inquiries, so that's something that select committees do, and that's something that you will find with your work, as we did, is really important for actually trying to drive change, because they will actually raise it with government and say, look, this is something that needs to happen. Government surveys, this is where, you might plan. And you will plan. It's essential that you plan, trust me. But there are things that can kind of fall into your lap. So we were actually wanting to be involved in a policy review. So we had said, look, we want to be involved in this policy review. We were talking to the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, as they were referred to at the time. We were talking to the Government Equalities Office, the Department of Work and Pensions. We were talking to them saying, hey, look, we want to be involved in the policy review around parental leave. Please, have us come along. That would be really great. And what they then interpreted that as, oh, well, we'll get you involved in the, the parental rights survey, which at the time was called the maternity paternity rights survey. And, that was something that we didn't ask for, but they actually, misunderstood us and actually involved us because of our work around shared parental leave. So there was a module in the survey that was specifically around shared parental leave. But obviously, being a part of that, we were one of, both Polly and I, we were two of the four academics that were actually involved in that to advise on the parental rights survey. So that was really important. So obviously, to get a better understanding of improved use of policy, understanding what might be preventing or barriers existing to the use of policy, things like that, the parental rights survey is essential. It's really important to actually understand what's going on, how things need to be improved and changed. So having that as a means of actually, getting toward that desired outcome, really important. Engagement with civil servants, really important. You need to, they have a craving and you know, a desire to actually make sure that they are on top of things in terms of research. So, engagement with civil servants, people think, oh, I don't know how to, again, I don't know how to get started. If you can go through an NGO, or if you can go through a business contact, or you can even go through your local MP, that can be really great. That can be quite useful. So just try and think about different ways in which you can try and reach through to that government department. And they have a craving, like I said, for your research, for data, for, just to have academic input is very, very valuable to them. And as I've said, engagement with lobby groups, that was really important for us, and it continues to be important for us to try and drive change in terms of policy, in terms of even just generating contacts with other organizations as well. That's really, really great. And the other thing is, if anybody wants me to talk about like the use of the awards to actually drive change, please, let me know, and I can actually talk about that at the end as well. As I said, that's something that we do to try and encourage other organizations to change their policies. So what we've had is that, the awards are hosted in Parliament, and we're just finalising that we're going to get Annalisa Dodds to host. And what will happen is, we have organisations in the audience that they might not have applied for the awards, but they're thinking about it. And we have the organisations talk about what they actually do to improve their support for working dads. And that covers things like parental leave policies, flexible working, support for returning fathers, and there's leadership and culture. So we actually try and get them to talk about it. And then actually what we found is that organizations are inspired and will take that on board and actually take it away and implement change. And then they apply for the awards, and then we can document that. Yeah. Okay, so and members of Parliament, and then you've got peers as well. So people don't really talk about the House of Lords as being useful, but they actually are. Like I said, when we engaged with Baroness Burt, she coordinated with Lord Fox and Lord McNichol, and that actually, was the one of the reasons why we had the Good Work Plan, consultation, which was really great. So, that was the House of Lords. So members of Parliament also excellent, really important to engage with, and they have again a craving to actually understand your research, what it is that you do, and they want to keep up to date with what's going on, and yeah, so they will also, in our experience, when we've engaged with MPs, they'll ask you for a lit review. They'll ask you for policy recommendations. They'll ask you for all of these things, and that can actually be very, very useful in terms of having that track, that line of evidence to demonstrate your input contribution to achieving those changes and the outcomes of those changes. So yeah, I would say that it's just really important to, ensure that you are constantly looking for those opportunities to connect, to create those networks. And it is persistence. So, it's not something that can happen overnight. You do have to persist. You do have to have that resilience in relation to developing contacts in the beginning. I will be honest, when we first started the Equal Parenting Project, I remember Holly and I sat in her office and we were both going, nobody will talk to us. Nobody will talk to us. But then, through perseverance and just, again, just taking any opportunity that would present itself, finding those opportunities, obviously, through the context within the university, we were able to build those contacts. So it won't come to you. You have to find it. And the great thing is that universities across the UK will be very interested in connecting you with people that will obviously be really interested in your research. That's the interest of the university. They want to achieve impact, so they will help you. But yeah, so and also in terms of contacts, fellow researchers, and that's something that has kind of developed over time, I think, for myself and Holly, just having those contacts, knowing there are other people doing impactful work in this area, and it's been beneficial for us. When they hear things through the pipeline, they'll tell us, we tell them, this is what I've heard, this is what's going to happen, this is, what are you going to do about this part? We're thinking this, etc. That's actually been really useful for us. And it's also really great to just cheer other people on in terms of what great work they're doing in impact and the successes they've had. So that's been really, really, really useful for us. Um, what evidence do you need to show you achieved the desired outcome? So this is where you see I've mentioned direct citations. That's actually really useful, but it's just one point of engagement, right? You need to actually, in terms of impact, what we need to do is follow up in terms of what has happened as a result of that. So we had our work referenced when it came to, for example, the shared parental leave policy review, and that was published, was it last year or the year before? And they cited our work. Great, wonderful. But in terms of being able to flesh out exactly what we did, how we contributed, things like that, testimonials have been great. Testimonials are really useful because they will actually say, we used your work this way. This is what contributed to. And again, really, really valuable. We use that amongst organizations. So testimonials are really great for us in terms of getting them to say what they did as a result of our recommendations and what's happened after that. And then, civil servants, really, really useful. And, when it does come to our work, we have had the benefit of those relationships to actually give us quotes that we can put into policy briefs. So we had the office, what used to be the Government Equalities Office that then became the Equality Hub, is now the Office for Equality and Opportunities. We had them provide us with a quote of how the Equal Parenting Project work has benefited them or has been of use to them. And we've included that within a policy brief, which we will distribute in events that we hold to further encourage and actually offer us a bit of cred, to get organizations to engage with us because, again, we can say, look, we work with organizations, we work with government, and this quote actually does look quite great and, very positive about what we do. So that's been really useful for us. And, employee feedback in terms of organization policy change, in terms of, what benefits, what have they actually had as a result of that? So that's been really useful. So we've actually been able to capture a lot of employee feedback through the likes of the Working Dad Employer Awards. So whenever an organization actually applies to the awards, what they have to do is outline what it is that they're currently doing, and if they meet the criteria to win the award, obviously great for them. But every organization will get feedback. So they'll get feedback saying this is what we recommend that you do. And obviously that's linked back to our research in terms of, our recommendations and things like that. So always thinking about how has our research underpinned those recommendations? And, we can then say, this is what you should do. And then the bar gets a little bit higher if they want to apply for the awards again. So we have to recognize that there needs to be a continued improvement. You don't just say, we have flexible working as a day one right. Great. We need to say, okay, this is what you need to do in addition to this. Because again, you might have won last time based upon doing XYZ, but you need to do more to actually win again. And that's actually something that's been beneficial for us because when they did apply again, so they've applied this year for the awards, and the awards are going to be in July, in Parliament, so in London. And what happens is they say, you recommended that we do this. We have implemented this, and these have been the outcomes. So we've actually had them supply us with employee feedback. We've had them supply us with metrics, the numbers. So, in terms of how, if they made amendments to their policy offering, how many have actually used that policy now? So again, this was our way of actually being able to identify positive outcomes as a result of those changes that were recommended by our work. Freedom of information requests. This is actually something that I think is underestimated, and people don't kind of fully appreciate just how useful they can be. So for us, it's been really great to actually encourage organizations to be in touch with us, or not organizations, sorry, lobby groups. So we're recognized as always being, on top of it when it comes to having up-to-date, freedom of information requests. So, and that's things like, in terms of use of paternity leave and government, obviously this is a UK, the total numbers of claims made for paternity leave or paternity pay, sorry. And then we break that down by income, the duration that's used and things like that. All of this is also helpful for us to demonstrate again those changes in policy that have happened. So we advised that they, change paternity leave, like increase the availability of paternity leave. But then we also talked about the benefits of blocks, and a lot of researchers were talking about paternity leave and the duration, but we had data as a result of our research through shared parental leave, which had blocks, about the benefits of blocks. So, when it came to the Paternity Leave Act amendment, they actually made it so that, and this is really not great, obviously, it's 2 weeks still, that's not enough. But when it came to, the amendment, they broke those weeks up so that those could be used within those first 52 weeks, right? So that was an amendment that came as a result of our recommendations. And then what we'll do is continue to see, has there been a change in the usage and, the duration, etc., of paternity leave. So we're able to use the FOIs to actually understand the changes that have happened. And then we'll continue to get employee feedback and things to understand with more detail as to how beneficial that has been for them. Things like gender pay gap reporting, obviously that's a legislative requirement, but many organizations don't do it, which is not great. But again, this is something that we've implemented within the Working Dad Employer Awards when it comes to us being able to understand what organizations have as their gender pay gap, and then the next time they apply, we can understand any changes in that as a result of, or try to understand that, whether the recommendations we've made to them had any contribution to that. And that's where video interviews are really great. Getting testimonials, wonderful. Sometimes it can be a back and forth. We will agree to say this, we'll agree to say that. Sometimes also you need to actually pre-draft things for them to actually help them. But it also means that you can actually give them an idea of what language you want and what your needs are. But when it comes to that back and forth, sometimes an organization could say, no, I don't want to say that. Or, sometimes people might think that you're overstepping and like making it seem that taking their job, or like, making it seem like they didn't do anything. And that's where sometimes an organization you might have an employee that you're dealing with that they will say, they'll not want to do that because they're thinking, well, that's going to impact how I might be viewed in terms of my performance. And that's not the case, obviously, but this is where it's really sensitive. Like, it's important to be sensitive that some people, when it comes to, even though you might have actually done exactly what you've said in that testimonial, sometimes an organization might say, oh, well, actually, I don't feel comfortable with that. And you have to just be okay with it. Even though you did all those things and they don't want to acknowledge it, that can happen. And then there are times where they'll just be like, yeah, great, signed. And you're like, thank you. But this is where video interviews are actually really useful because people are completely honest. It's not a back and forth, like, to talk about, like, is this okay for a testimonial or something like that? It's just them saying, this is how you were really great and useful for us. And that's actually really awesome because there isn't the need to do the back and forth, but it's just completely, you know, yeah, they're just speaking off the cuff, and it's really good. So anytime we do an event, we always make sure we have a videographer, just because people are completely honest and open, and you can capture that. That is evidence. So that's really, really important to know. Um, and then we've got, sorry, let's see, planning evidence, points to consider. So these are just the pieces of, what you need to be mindful of when you're actually gathering that evidence. So those are the points to consider. Okay, so talking,
Sarah,
yeah,
could I just interrupt?
yes,
We're just mindful of the time. We've got about
yeah, this,
16,
yeah,
17 minutes, and I've seen your slide. You've got about 3 or 4 more to go. So,
yes,
um, if you could,
no,
please,
not a problem. That's all fine. So
about five
yeah,
minutes. I'll
is
get
that
back to you.
no, great, wonderful. So, when it does come to considering what to actually include in your evidence, just be mindful of these things. But this is actually really important to emphasize. With organizations, you need to be mindful of their resources and what time that they have available in terms of being able to produce or provide you with that evidence. So just be aware of that. These are some of the examples that you can have as evidence. So obviously for us, we have those testimonials, we have video interviews, we have, evidence from the Working Dad Employer Awards, things like that. But, you can have an array of different types of evidence. So this just gives you an idea. Um, and then the do's when actually gathering evidence. So we've got here, make it clear from the beginning when you're engaging with an organization, when you're engaging with civil servants, when you're engaging with an NGO, whoever it is, tell them in your first meeting, or if you haven't already, just tell them in your next meeting that you will be gathering evidence. This is say it's something that is a requirement of your university to demonstrate the work that you do. Right. And that way they'll be like, oh, okay, no, not a problem, cool. So it means that when you do actually come back to them and say, hey, look, can I just make sure that we gather this evidence? It can be in the form of a testimonial, or we could do a Zoom chat where we can record it. That's, like they'll be like, oh, okay, they're expecting it, right? And yeah, so the other thing is be aware that when you do actually ask them for evidence, if you're wanting certain metrics, you need to know what they actually do capture or gather as metrics when you engage with them. So if you're wanting to have something and you approach them and say, hey, look, can we actually understand how this has changed, or what has happened with this, and they say we don't capture that, you need to know this beforehand. So that's really important. Being aware of what it is that they do actually capture will help you. Do start gathering evidence as early as possible. Really important, because obviously, if you do this at the very end, it's not pretty. So, and it's a real hard slog to try and actually pick up all those evidence points. Whereas if you document things and actually gather them like at certain periods of time, maybe making sure that, maybe once a year, or maybe even once every 2 years, you're actually gathering that testimonial, that will be useful for you. And then when it comes to the don'ts, don't forget to let them know that you want to gather evidence. Don't overlook what you can advise on. And that's really important, because sometimes people will make an assumption, even when it comes to things like the inquiries. So we submitted to the Economic Affairs Committee one time, and you wouldn't think, when it comes to parental leave or flexible working, that might, be something of interest for that committee. It was. So, we could actually advise them in that area. And, it's really important to also not ignore the strength or the importance of relationships. So, make sure that you build those relationships, make sure that you maintain those relationships. Don't let those kind of, fall off a cliff. You need to make sure that you're maintaining those contacts as well, because people leave organizations, people move on, especially in the civil service. They might actually move departments. So we actually found that after the change in government last year, that a number of our contacts actually moved departments. So maintaining those relationships is really important. Um, right. And then obviously I'll just finish with this one in terms of, make sure that you actually continually or continuously gather evidence. So yeah, and just to finish this up, I'm actually really happy to talk to anybody if they want to talk about the Equal Parenting Project. Obviously, that's fun. But just in terms of how to do impact or anything like that too. So feel free to reach out to me. Okay.
Thank
That's
you very much, Sarah. We'll give you a round of applause um, in 10 minutes or around about that time. So my apologies, first of all, because I was meant to be introducing you and bigging you up because I'm a big fan of the stuff that you've been doing because you've previously done a presentation for us at Heriot Watt before. Anyway, so I mean, the key issue really is that impact is really important increasingly for
yeah.
us as academics. Um, and for the EDI caucus, and obviously the people who are mostly here today are people who are running relatively small, modest projects. But the idea of EDICA generally, amongst many things, is to shift practice related to EDI. But so many of the things that you've gone through as far as I'm concerned, are fairly generic. So I will open up the floor for any questions. I know there's a couple of questions in the chat already, but if I may, could I just start with one question, which it really is, and it's a cliche of a question, really, in the sense that, what are the easy wins, if you like, that everyone can do when they're planning for impact? Because ultimately, what we're trying to do here is it gets messy when we've got impact, and we find that out further down the line. That's always a possibility, but what are the kind of one, two, three kind of things that we probably all need to do to put ourselves in the best possible situation to save us chasing our metaphorical behinds once our project is finished or even further beyond that?
So for myself, I would say, in terms of policy, use the university context, make sure that you actually know who to talk to in terms of their specialty. There are people in your university that will be expert in terms of public affairs, and I'm specifically talking about policy, so apologies if this is not of relevance for some. But they will know how to navigate and talk to MPs. They will know what to do in terms of a consultation submission or an inquiry submission. So if you're not familiar with those, or if it's your first time and you're unsure, they will know. They will actually have the expertise to know how things should look and all of that sort of stuff. The next is uh, in terms of easy wins. Oh, I would say just get to events, like go to other people's events and actually start by, I'm going to sound so old-fashioned here, and I know this is going to make me sound like really bad, but like actually, I know this has gone out of fashion, but a business card is really, really useful. Just because for myself, whenever I go to an event, people will say, oh, what are your contact details? And you could get your phone out and do this and that, but you can just give them the card. And actually, as a result of that, I've been able to contact or connect with other researchers, but actually having that card has connected us with MPs, research analysts from MP offices, stuff like that. So be very, just I suppose that kind of connects to the next thing, which is be very open to networking. So being at those events, if it's another academics events, or like if it's a university event, very likely to be a university event, be willing to actually talk to organizations. You will feel awkward in the beginning when it comes to saying, hi, this is have an elevator pitch ready, in terms of having like a 2-minute summary of what your research is, what work you do, and have that ready so that when you do engage with them, talk about how, you want to actually have a meeting perhaps at the end of that. So you can say, let's connect. This would be really, really useful. Ask them for their card, ask them for their details. So contacting the university, engaging with them and getting, expert support, and making sure that you have a willingness to network and being ready to actually connect and build those relationships.
Brilliant. So for me, it's relational. You've got
Yeah.
to put yourself out there.
Oh yeah.
If you're not a natural, then you obviously need to.
I will put my hand up. I hate it.
Yeah. No, I'm in that territory as well.
I'm like I would rather sit in the corner and not talk to anybody. So like last year we were at an event for the Labour well yeah, so it's a Labour Party event, and obviously all these organizations were there, and I'm like going, oh my God, I really don't want to talk to anybody. But I had to just literally just kind of force myself to engage with these people. And as a result of that, we got 2 contacts with organizations through that. And that was just at that event talking to people. So even though I felt cringe, I hated it. It was a benefit. So there will be things where you have to kind of step outside your comfort zone, and it's just inevitable. Like it will happen. You're going to have to do it. So yeah. But yeah, I would have rather just sat in the corner and not talk to anybody.
There's always email and LinkedIn and things like that.
Oh,
It doesn't
absolutely. Yeah.
always have to
Yes.
be,
Oh, I will say
but
link
knowing somebody first of all, face to face, probably helps.
I will say LinkedIn has really blown up in terms of contacts and being able to connect with people. So that's not something I like to do. Holly does that. But she, has been able to develop those connections through LinkedIn quite well. And even in terms of the space within EDI, there will be a lot of champions on LinkedIn. So if you connect with them, that can be very, very beneficial for yourself. So yeah.
Well, I don't know if Lizzie, you want to ask the question that you posted, but something to do with interviews, to corroborate evidence. Is
I
that?
didn't. That was me. Sorry, I
Oh,
didn't
beg your
realize.
pardon.
That's because we're both Edika admin. I'm Fenella. I'm the other Edika admin. It was just about the consent. Like, do you have to treat those interviews for getting the impact and the feedback? Do you have to treat those in the same kind of way that you do a research interview with like consent and things like that? And
Well, I think it's
ethics.
yeah, no, that's actually a really great question. So when it does come to consent, obviously we have to have their consent before we record anything. But so, we have to tell them what we'd be using it for as well. So we'd have to say, like, are you will, this is what this is for, and this is how it's going to help us. Are you willing to do this? And who would be, who would this data in a way, like in terms of the video interviews and things like that, how will that be used? Where will it be securely stored and things like that? So we do actually treat it like it's, a data collection. So that's really important. But it's also really important for us to kind of make that, well, say all of those things to them, because it actually helps us look, well, legit, right? So, if they're going, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's really, really good. Okay, yeah, not a problem. That's a benefit for us.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, I would add to that in a way is that it's not quite a research interview in the sense that of data protection and informed consent that you might need, unless you're trying to use them as for
exactly
kind of research output in themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. You need to, you said something earlier on about you effectively more often than not have to draft a letter for them to agree to. That's exactly what I did when I did an impact case study. You fix this is what I want you to say, but by all means say exactly what you need to say and what you think is right, and change anything that's not correct, etc., and things like that.
One thing I'll just say, just jumping in terms of a testimonial, like 3 words are actually really valuable when it comes to a testimonial. This led to. So, in terms of being able to get somebody to actually say, this led to, really powerful. Because what you don't want to have is them say, we got your information and it was really useful. How is it useful? So it's really important to kind of try and actually, like you were saying, encouraging them to use specific words, but obviously if they don't want to, that's up to them. But if you can try and actually in the draft that you provide to them, that sort of thing, then that's quite useful.
Yeah, I mean, a key issue really is get them to say, what did you do?
Yeah.
And can you kind of put some kind of value on that?
Yeah.
Whether that's in terms of, people are staying better or better jobs, or
Yeah.
it saved us some cash, or we don't recruit as much as we used to do. We've got less turnover. These are all the generic stuff related to EDI, of course, but get them to, because they don't necessarily, as long as there's somebody of an authoritative figure in the organization, as long as they say that,
Yeah.
then that should be taken at value. It doesn't necessarily have to do a whole research project to establish that.
Yeah.
You're hoping some senior person in the organization to say, yeah, this made a difference, or a politician or some other kind of policymaker, this made a difference. Somebody's asking a question. I'll summarize it where I think is probably where it's really getting to. Effectively, this person is saying that, how do you manage to do all of this? Because and balance your other duties. I know we had this conversation the last time round, but nobody else was there. So how do you manage it, Sarah? What's the reality of doing impact on top of all the other stuff
So I will
everybody
be
here
honest.
needs to do?
This is where I would say if I could go back in time, I probably would have kept it small. Or no, not small. I would have made it smaller, not small. Because it is a beast. The Equal Parenting Project has become a bit of a beast. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot to do. But I would say that it's incredibly rewarding. But if you're starting out on the impact journey, just make sure that you contain it to a level that you can manage. And like we've got those 4 different streams. 3 of those streams are very time intensive. And it's something that I think has benefited me in terms of my career, because obviously in terms of my experience with policy making, policy advising, sorry, but also in terms of doing impact work, it has become something of my expertise, and so it's been very beneficial for myself. But in terms of balancing it, originally, and it's not the case now, but originally that was evenings, that was weekends, that was, having to forego a lot to actually achieve those connections, to achieve that, the changes that have been made in legislation. But now we're being much more rigid with our time. So we have actually had to, kind of forego certain things to actually maintain that balance. So in the beginning, it was very difficult, and I'm being completely honest. I've benefited significantly in my career as a result of that, but now I'm in a situation where rather than me having to go and follow up, do all the chasing and stuff like that, people are coming to us, and we can actually, like, now we've got evenings, we've got weekends. But yeah, I will be honest and say that if I could go back in time, I would have probably made it a bit smaller and manageable, so that I didn't have to give up those evenings and weekends.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We're out of time, unfortunately. Could I ask everybody to show their appreciation for speaking to us today, Sarah? And as Sarah's already mentioned, Sarah's offered kindly, if you wish to reach out to her about this project and more generally about impact. But I would say, rather than saddling you with more work, I think please feel free. You can reach out to the EDI caucus, and especially if you're on Flexible Fund 3, reach out to me, because this is part of my role in terms of leading in this work stream about supporting all the PIs and the co-Is, and impact is really important here. So please feel that you can reach out to me. I would say primarily not because this is a competition, but just because this is what the idea of the EDI caucus as well, and how we're trying to run it as well. So thanks very much, Sarah. And one further question was that, would you be okay sharing the